Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. This topic means so much to me, the awakening peace, the conscious path to lasting change. And I remember last night I was having a chat with my friend Stephen Key, and he said, why is there an unspoken parking order when it comes to human suffering? And it made me ponder, when we speak of peace, we must ask ourselves, what is peace if it does not extend to all the corners of the world, to every human being? And what is peace if it leaves behind a legacy of pain and forgotten suffering? When we talk about human suffering, there is a painful paradox because while we see unity in war, we see fragmentation in healing. When bombs fall in one place, they also explode in all other places that are facing these issues, traumatizing and killing. But when it comes to the time to heal the wounds, the promises of unity often shatter. The promises of the collective approach, it fades, and the world turns its attention away from those who are suffering in silence. And when we talk about sustainable development goals, of leaving no one behind, we must ask ourselves, are we truly not leaving anyone behind? Or are we leaving the most important people behind? Women and children who do not choose these wars, the forgotten communities. And in every war-torn country, in every neglected community, it is these people who bear the brunt of the war. Europe has been long a leader on many fronts in terms of advancements, and it has shaped the modern world. But today, Europe must look inwards. The world, particularly the global south, is seeking a different kind of leadership, one that is compassionate, inclusive, and committed to long-term change. The political climate is shifting, and Europe must reposition itself for this new era of global leadership. The responsibility is clear that Europe must not only act in terms of conflict, but in times also commit to healing for peace. And we cannot talk about peace without acknowledging that war does more than destroy. It actually leaves behind silent killers in conflict zone. Diseases like neglected tropical disease thrive where water is contaminated and healthcare is absent. The conditions of war, the destruction of infrastructure, and the lack of clean water can create breeding grounds for neglected tropical diseases. They are often invisible, but they are no less deadly, and they are avoidable, but the war makes them inevitable. In Ukraine, while we hear the cries for peace, we must also hear the silent cries of children freezing in the cold, hypothermia. In other parts of the world, heat is the messenger of suffering, incubating diseases that should have never existed. So this is not just an issue for Ukraine, and we stand in solidarity, but it is a global issue. And peace is more than the absence of war. We must restore health, dignity, and hope. When we choose to awaken peace, we must acknowledge that the wounds of conflict are not just physical, but emotional and environmental, and it manifests in several ways. And we are past the days where every nation is for itself, and the pandemic has shown us that we are all interconnected. And the world cannot afford to ignore the suffering of one while prioritizing that of another. Whether it is in Ukraine, whether it is in Sudan, Yemen, or Gaza, it is the same sound of bombs, and it may echo differently, but we are all made of flesh and blood. So if we are to awaken peace, we must break the old patterns of neglect, of division, and exclusion. And it is not enough to say peace if it does not address the root cause of suffering. We must break the pattern that leaves some behind. We must break the pattern of selective attention to suffering. And we must break the pattern of waiting for tragedy to strike before we respond. And you would all agree with me that isn't it time to break the old patterns? For what you think you know can still be a cage. And know that in every pillar holding up this world, there are cracks. And now more than ever, we must see them all. Break the old patterns. The house that refuses to rebuild will one day watch its roof cave in. Oh, poem after poem, the voices have been calling, their cries like drums sounding from deep in the earth. And all they ask is release from the chains. Will you answer? Or do we not come from a lineage of change makers, men who rise like mountains, women who bend rivers with their will? To show us once more the path that we've buried in the dust, the roads that lead into unspoken territories where there are people waiting, waiting to speak every truth you've given to them, to shout every hope, to echo every sound. Break the old patterns. The woman who stands tall in her own skin is a fire no wind can blow out. Watch as the sky learns to stretch its boundaries. Oh, there is no greater force than a chorus of voices breaking free of silence, demanding a new dawn. For the truth will always crack the stone, and the voices of the free can crumble even the highest of walls. And so I say, if a woman is the seed, then is she not the garden? Does a garden of wild flowers bend to the weight of an ancient hand? Will you not lift the stone from the backs of our sisters and take her from the shadow to the seat of her power? Are there whispers? Do they say that her place is in silence, the background? Do they ask why she needs to lead when her grandmother could not? But tell them the difference between a woman who sleeps and the one who is awake is freedom. Tell them the woman who speaks can bend the tide with her words. Tell them there is so much power out there waiting to be claimed, but only those who break the mold are given wings. And the great call has been made, but heavy, like a weight that has gone unchecked. The structure weakens because every moment a girl is told to lower her gaze, to quiet her thoughts, and she wonders, what would my world look like without this ceiling? And what is the color of my ambition when it is unleashed? Is there space for me in this world, in my country, she asks. And I ask you today, how many hands will it take to tear down these walls? And how many voices to create a poem, a song, something of change that will last forever? How many truths can you feel rising in your chest today? Break the old patterns. I do not come to you by chance, and history is a will that every now and then we get to push forward. And what is peace if not a world where power is shared and voices rise without fear? And when the future arrives, will we be ready? Will our daughters be ready? Will there be enough space for them to stand tall in their brilliance? Break the old patterns. We are tired of buying funeral clothes instead of baby garments. Thank you.